Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 156, I was very lucky to have Karl Darden on the podcast. He is the founder of Navy Sports Nation, which is a blog, and he is also the founder of Navy Sports Central, his podcast as well. We talked about many things about basically Navy sports and how they are helping to form and shape members of the Navy. And we also talked about his blog as well as the podcast. We also talked about a number of other different things as well. I have to say it was a joy to have him on the podcast. I look forward to having him on the podcast in the near future. So please don't forget, subscribing helps the podcast out a lot for myself. And yeah, please enjoy the show and have a great day. Aha. Peace. Oh. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 156, I'm very lucky and privileged to have Karl Darden. Darden. I got that right. Yes. He is the founder of Navy Sports Nation. He also has a blog. No, not a blog. He does. That's his blog. He has a podcast called Navy Sports Central. How are you today, sir? How are things?
Very good. Very good. How are you doing?
I am all good. I'm smiling. The sun is out in the UK. We do not have temperatures as hot as where you are right now, or what's going on in the West Coast with the dome of heat, as they say.
That's true.
Cool. I have to ask. Now, when did you found your blog? How long ago was this?
Well, the first feature that I published came out in late January of 2020. So just a little over about a year and a half ago, we'll call it. The original idea, well, the way it kind of evolved into that, that first blog post, you'd probably have to go back about another 8 years before that, because I don't spend a ton of time on Facebook, on my own personal page. Okay. But what I do is spend a lot of it on my class page from school, which is the Naval Academy. And also, well, that was primarily where I was. So we just talked about, stuff related to sports and everything. And yeah, just a bunch of other stuff that's class related, that sort of thing. So I don't know exactly when it was. It's probably around the 2011, 2012 timeframe when I just, if Navy had a football game, after it was over, if they, whether they won or lost, I'd type in a couple of sentences. Hey, pretty good game from Navy today. They beat so-and-so and this, X, Y, and Z happened, but it would be like 3 or 4 sentences. Right. And then over time, they just, 3 and 4 sentences became 3 and 4 paragraphs. And then that became like a full blown analysis and breakdown of each game, to the point where I just had people just getting back to me and saying, hey, this is a really good breakdown, blah, 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 blah. And then it was one of my old roommates from the academy who said, hey, have you ever thought about, starting a blog? Because you have a style that would fit pretty well in terms of your writing style. And I said, nah, it's a lot going on. I'm kind of busy with work, and I just kind of let it drop. But then several years later, a lot of things changed, and I was still doing those write-ups for our class page just because everybody liked them so much, and they were a lot of fun for me too. Yeah. But then some things changed in terms of work, and I said, I might have a little bit more time to do this. So the thing that kind of clinched it for me is when I was back from my last reunion, which is in October of 2019. I was talking to one of my classmates, and she said, I hope you don't mind, but I actually ran your stuff by some people I know that work like in Navy sports information, just to kind of get their take. And I said, oh, I appreciate that. And she said, look, I do this for a living, and you got a pretty good knack for doing it. So maybe if you consider, doing a blog, I think you'd probably get a pretty good response. And I said, all right, I'll think about it. So sure enough, I went home and kind of did some research and everything, and decided to move forward with it. And like I said, the first feature was written in late January 2020. And I basically put out, I hold to a schedule for the first year or so of about one post every week to 10 days. And then when the podcast came out, I was trying to alternate where I'd do a podcast episode and then the following week would be a blog post, and just kind of alternate like that. Now, during the summer, things kind of slow down a little bit because, the Academy is off for the summer in terms of sports anyway. And there's not as much stuff to write about. There's enough stuff to kind of talk about, because what I'm doing right now is I'm taking each episode and I'm previewing the Navy football team for the upcoming year. So like, for instance, the podcast that's going to come out next week is going to be focusing specifically on the linebackers. And my guest is going to be actually a classmate of mine who was arguably one of the best linebackers who ever played at Navy. So it actually works out to have him as a guest to be able to help me break down that position, since he's basically a subject matter expert there. So
yeah, linebackers are just purely insane. Look, this is the thing. Like, linebackers typically, in my mind, are the crazy ones, but the straight up psycho out there on the field is the strong safety. Just just by himself, just looking, just looking. Yeah.
We have a strong safety that just flies all over the field. I mean, it's just like insane the way he plays.
Yeah, no, because like I dabbled with a little bit of American football, and I was like a cornerback, just trying to chase down a wide receiver here and there, and put in the occasional hit. But I was like, yes. There was a couple of times where I was running into things and like going, I'm far too pretty to like take this hit. But yeah, like had these two, like had like a safety and a like strong safety. They both were, like, ironically, were called Sasha. And like, this is the thing. Like if either one of these two got you in your sights, they're just like, okay, I wrap the legs, keep them up there, just like going, okay. And you saw them come straight in, pow,
right.
Literally cripple someone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're gonna have this linebacker, like the all-time GOAT of linebackers, greatest of all time, coming on your show to discuss the linebackers which are out there right now. So yeah. So with that, like, one of the things I've never kind of understood when it comes to sort of the Navy sort of game system, or Army or Air Force, when they have these teams, is it a case of if someone joins the Academy and they've got, like, say, a strong football setting in their past, they're automatically like, hey, how you doing? Have you ever thought about playing some football? Or is it just a case of they sort of pick them out when they're doing their sort of physical training?
Oh, that's a good question. And the easiest way to answer that is think about all three of those schools, Navy, Army, and Air Force, as just another university when it comes to their recruiting programs. Okay. The only difference is they're going after a different type of athlete, meaning because of the service commitment. And when I say that, I mean, when somebody graduates from the Naval Academy, they're looking strict. They're looking basically at a 5-year commitment to the service. Okay. Yes. In our case, either the Navy or the Marine Corps. So if you're an athlete of any kind, particularly football, basketball, baseball, and you are intent on a pro career, the service academy is probably not the way you want to go. But if you are an athlete that just is, in that, usually they rate them, 1 through 5 stars. So if you're like a strong 3-star athlete, borderline 4, who just wants to play, say, in this case, competitive football, competitive Division I football, where you're going against the likes of Notre Dame, Houston, Cincinnati, teams like that are fairly strong programs, then it's worth considering, because Navy is extremely competitive. And there have been players, and the guy that I'm going to have on as my guest next week is actually one of them. But their development was so unforeseen. I mean, they developed at an accelerated rate once they got to the academy, that all of a sudden you had pro teams kind of wanting to check them out. you know. But you know, he had made his decision. He said, well, after I graduate, I'm just going to go into aviation because things were just too uncertain. But just recently, I mean, we have, you know, our quarterback who started in 2019 is on the Miami Dolphins roster right now. And basically he was recruited as a running back essentially, right? Okay. But his skill set was such that, okay, we want to just have him in our back pocket as a backup quarterback. And then things kind of shifted a little bit where he was developed into, you know, the full-time starter. Now he had a rocky junior campaign as a quarterback. I mean, because he was still learning the system and his first instinct was always just to pull down the ball and run. But during that offseason, they worked with him passing wise. They worked with him on the offense, and he came out and he probably had, it was probably the most productive senior season as a quarterback, as a triple option quarterback ever. I mean, the only other guy that probably matched him was the one who we recognize as probably being the best triple option quarterback in all of college football. And he graduated in 2016. But this other kid I'm talking about, Malcolm Perry, his 2019 campaign was just unbelievable. And it was good enough to get him drafted by the Miami Dolphins as a running back. And he actually got into a few games last year. And, you know, who knows? He might be able to stick with the team this year. You never know because, you know, the NFL is just such a behemoth when it comes to just, you know, grinding out players and stuff like that. So
absolutely, like, yeah, because like this is the thing, like, yes, like what is the sort of length of time of a career of an NFL like player, like 3 to 4 years?
Oh yeah, on average it's that exactly. Yeah.
So basically, while the machine is grinding out a player here and there, like going from running back to then quarterback, that is an unusual combination. The only time you only see like when it's trick plays, I call them trick plays.
Yeah, exactly.
Just does that, but not on a regular basis. No.
Right. And the reason that occurred was because, like I said, initially during that time of when he was there, we had just graduated the guy who like held all these NCAA records, and they were kind of thin at quarterback. And then of course, well, the guy who took over for him was awesome, but then he tore his ACL in the very first game. So then the guy that came in to back him up did an incredibly good job. And but he ended up getting, I think he broke his foot in the very last game of the season, which basically pushed this guy Malcolm Perry into the number 2 spot. So there's just a lot going on. And then when he was a sophomore, we just didn't really have the talent level at quarterback, you know, across the board. We had one guy who was a really hard-nosed runner, but his passing wasn't all that great. Perry was an unbelievably good runner, but his passing skills were really lacking. So that year was really rough. I mean, I think the mids went like, I don't know, 3-10 that season, but then they bounced back with an 11-2 year because, you know, Perry had done all that work and on his game and everything, and he just had a record-breaking year.
Yeah. So why were they so short at quarterback? Because I would have thought they would.
Well, it was more injuries than anything else. And you know how things go sometimes. You know, recruit players. Some of them decide to go elsewhere. Some of them just don't develop the way you think. And yeah, I mean, that one particular season, we were just kind of caught because we just didn't have the right people. And there were other reasons too. I mean, a lot of times, you know, people want to put everything on the quarterback, but a quarterback is only going to be as good as his offensive line.
Yeah.
And if you have an offensive line that's just decimated by injury, that just makes things really, really tough. And that's kind of what happened in 2018. And like I said, 2019, we had a healthy offensive line the whole year. They set a record for, you know, rushing yards for the, you know, average rushing yards per game. It was like 360, which was just unheard of. And then our quarterback, Malcolm Perry, like I said, he rushed for over 2,000 yards in the season. So
300 yards. 2,000 yards for a running back. So like overall, like over 3,000 yards for the actual line itself as well.
Yeah. So if you look at, I mean, they basically were the engine that, that drove that whole machine there.
That's insane. That is absolutely insane. No, because getting over 2,000 yards as a running back, that is kind of, how can I say, it's kind of the running back's Everest.
I think,
especially
especially the college level, when you look at the fact that they're playing, if you include the bowl game, they're playing roughly 13 games or so.
Okay.
And well, here's the thing about Malcolm Perry. He had, going into the last two games, so that would have been against Army and against their bowl game against Kansas State, he was sitting on about around 1,500 yards. Okay. So he gained 500 yards in two games to kind of put him over the top there.
Yeah. Just give me the ball.
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah. Like, because, okay, like one of the things I think I know the difference, because when I watch the NFL, and that's like all the games which come over here in the UK,
right.
Like I kind of hear about the sort of college teams, but like one of the things when I do get to see the game side by side, like the college level, it doesn't have so much the same level of power. It's slightly less, but it's so much faster than the NFL from what I've seen. Would I be right in saying that, or am I sort of being like, did I just catch freaky games?
Well, I think you're right in one sense, in that the pace of the game, in terms of how the speed of the college game and so forth, in terms of how quickly it goes by, and the style of the offense, it gives the impression that it's a much more fast-paced game. Okay, that, and then you can look at the scores and tell that, right? I mean, they got, especially if you look at the first few weeks of the season, you just see some sick scores. I mean, teams like running up like 60 and 70 points on other teams, but if you're just talking straight up speed of the game,
yeah,
the NFL is a much faster game if you're talking about the speed of one individual versus another one. Okay. So, because that's what college recruits always say. They talk about, well, I felt like I was pretty prepared in terms of just dealing with the strength of the players, but the speed was another story altogether. So that's one thing that they just had to kind of adjust to, particularly the quarterbacks. If they always talk about the game slowing down for them. And that's when you start kind of seeing things really happen. Like, there's some exceptions, like obviously Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that guy, he adjusted pretty fast. And then there's other guys like the fellow who plays for Buffalo now. I can't remember what his name is, but it took him a while to kind of pick up, to kind of get adjusted to how fast things were happening on defense and, making the right reads and that sort of thing. So in college, the style of the offense, they're much more pass oriented, just a lot of shifting, a lot of other stuff like that going on. So in that sense, yeah, it's quick, it's fast paced, but person by person, individually, the speed of the game is much faster in the NFL.
What would you say? Like, that's great. What would you say was one of your sort of more sort of recent wow moments to witness in a game?
Well, if you're talking college, I'm going to go back to the quarterback who we had that just graduated a couple of years ago, Malcolm Perry. This guy, he's about 5'9", and at the time he was going at about 180, 185 pounds. Now, when he first started, he was only 160 pounds, and he got thrown around pretty good. And I used to basically just cringe every time he got hit, because I just thought that he was just going to crumple like a piece of tinfoil or whatever. But he was pretty durable as time went on. Now, what makes him so exceptional is his ability to cut either to the left or to the right equally without seemingly slowing down. I mean, he's one of these guys that if he gets in the open field and there's somebody right in front of him, he's not even worried about him. Okay, that guy is already beaten. Okay, he's worried about the guy that's behind him, right? So I don't know how many times I've been able to watch this kid play, and he would make cuts without slowing down that were 90-degree cuts, jump cuts, whatever you want to call them. And they were just so amazing that you could hear the whole crowd collectively just go, "Woo," like this, because they literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. I mean, that is the guy that got the biggest reaction out of me in college football over the last 5 to 10 years, easy, just in terms of his running talent. And even the coach said, look, when he would be interviewed, they would ask, the reporters would be asking him, hey, what kind of drills do you do to to get that kind of result in a running quarterback. And he looked at the reporter like he was crazy. And he said, look, man, you can't teach that. That's just God-given talent. I mean, the guy just has instincts. He's got eyes in the back of his head. And one of the things he kind of joked about, this is Malcolm Perry. He said, well, when I grew up, I grew up with my friends and my in a neighborhood, and we played tag, and I just didn't want to get tagged.
What type of tag game are they playing? That's what I've got to say.
He was just so incredibly elusive that nobody literally could get a hand on him sometimes out there on the football field. So, that was his training, playing tag when he was growing up.
If you get tagged, that's when they bring the pain. Okay, don't get tagged.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my Lord. So one of the things, okay, you mentioned this earlier, basically once they get out of the academy, it's 4 years of service, 5 years of service. And like going from being someone doing sports and everything like that to then go to service, what is that? Do you have sort of firsthand experience, or have you had people come back to you talking about what the sort of transition was for them?
Well, I witnessed it quite a bit. And it's not that unusual because like I said, most of the people who play varsity sports at Navy, I mean, they know that when they graduate, they're basically done, at least at that level. Now, certainly within the Navy itself, I mean, every unit has, I don't want to say every unit, but every unit I was ever in had intramural teams and stuff like that. So there's always an opportunity to play something, if it's not tackle football, at least a touch football, right? Basketball, you can play, softball, whatever. So there's always that. And I think that, a lot of folks they just accept it and just know that, okay, that was a time in my life that was fun and it's done with. And now some of them will stay connected in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they come back to the academy later as an assistant coach or something like that. In fact, I just read a story this morning where actually the Naval Academy has a second football team for players who are 170 pounds and below. Okay. They call that now. That's if they want to play. Now, obviously, if you weigh less than 170 pounds and you want to go out for the varsity football team, you can. There's no problem there.
Yeah.
But if you're 170 pounds and below, and you want to play football, and varsity isn't in the picture, then the quote unquote sprint football team is another option, right? Well, they just hired a new football coach, and that particular team usually swaps out coaches every 3 years because it is always somebody who's still on active duty for the Navy or the Marine Corps.
Right.
And this guy was a 2009 graduate of the academy, and now he's back for a 3-year hitch to do, to coach the Navy sprint football team.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's that way of staying connected to the sport even after you finish playing.
Right. Okay. Kind of sounds like rugby sevens. Basically, it's like rugby sevens is, instead of having the full complement of a rugby team, you just have it like the smaller team, and it's just sprinting
right.
up and down for again and again and again. No, I would never play rugby sevens because look, if I did, I would be on the sidelines, rolled up in the recovery position,
right.
Someone, kill me now, please. Just release me from this world. I'm ready. I've seen enough. It's going, but you got so much to live for. Not anymore. So with that, look, football, when I hear Army, Navy, it's always football. But this is the thing, I never really sometimes hear Air Force get involved when it's just it's Army and it's Navy, but
right.
It's football. But with regards to other sports, is it just as competitive, or is it less competitive, or is it held in the same prestige?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I'll address the Army Navy thing first, and then we'll talk about Navy Air Force. And it's kind of interesting because I just had a guy email me about that very same question. Hey, what's the Navy Air Force thing looking like? Well, let's start with Army Navy first, okay? Certainly football is the one that gets the most play.
Yeah.
But we compete against Army in 24 different sports, and every single one of them is just it's on the line. I mean, everybody's out there giving 100%. I don't care if you're talking about, tiddlywinks, marbles or what. I mean, it's going to be pretty intense, right? So both men's and women's sports, 24 sports total. And actually, I just did a blog feature on this about. Actually, it was just the last one. I published it about 2 weeks ago, and it was about the overall Army Navy sports series from the very first football game they played in 1890. I was able to, I basically talked about, when different sports were added and in which decade they were added in. And actually for the first, probably, I would say 50 years of the rivalry, Army had the advantage. They led by if you totaled up all the total number of wins in each sport, I mean, I think Army had the lead of about I want to say, well, here's what they do every year. Whoever wins the head-to-head competition, okay, say for instance they play 10 sports, right? And well, we'll just go with the current 24. They play 24 sports in a season. So this year it was a little bit reduced because of the pandemic, but this year they played 17 times.
Yeah.
All right. Navy won 13 of those. No, they played 20 times. Navy won 13 of those times, and Army came away with 7. Okay. So Navy gets bragging rights for that year, right?
Right. Yeah.
For 2021. Well, if you look back at all the years that we've played, I believe Navy has the advantage, is it 61 years they've won versus 43 for Army, and there's been 9 ties or something like that. And the place where Navy made the biggest jump was starting from about 1970, because we got an athletic director who came in there, and at the time Navy was about 7 years behind, in the competition. And he basically said, look, I've about had enough of this. We're beating them as much as possible. So he's the athletic director from about, the late 60s through, I would say the late 90s. Late 80s. We had another guy that came in right after him that maintained that level of excellence from 1988 to 2001. And then the athletic director we've had since 2001 has been unbelievable about getting the right coaches in here, and just establishing the kind of winning culture that everybody wants, but it still fits in with the entire Naval Academy mission. In other words, we're not obsessed with athletics here because we can't afford to be. That's not the job. But there's enough of a recognition for how important the physical mission is that, you get athletes, we attract athletes here who end up contributing to programs that in some cases they're elite programs internationally. I'll give you an example. Our rowing teams, right? I mean, they've sent teams over to Henley. They're about, an hour west of London to compete in that Henley Royal Regatta.
Yeah.
And in 2019, Navy sent a team there to compete against other military teams. The Naval Academy did. It was a mixed crew, 6 men and 2 women, plus the coxswain. And it was a field of 8. So they had to win 3 races, and they beat Germany for the championship. And I've watched that final on YouTube probably 2 dozen times, and it never gets old. Let me tell you. I mean, it is really fun to watch.
There's one thing the Brits at this present time is a good little rowing competition, put it this way.
Right.
If it's not Henley, it's Oxford Cambridge boat race, which just goes into a different level of a session for the 2 of those cities. But it's fantastic.
Now, the one question I hadn't answered yet was the whole Navy Air Force thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and like I said, I had a guy email me. In fact, he's an Academy grad from, about 20 years before I graduated. He said, hey, do you have any similar numbers on Navy Air Force? And I said, no, but I'll take a look. And what I found out was, number one, again, Navy Air Force is the most known for football. Okay. And in that case, Air Force does have the lead on us. They've won 31 times compared to 23 for us, I think. And for a while there, it was really lopsided, but for about the last 15 years, it's been really even. In the mid to late 2000s, Navy beat them 7 times in a row. So that kind of got us back into the game. And ever since then, it's been whoever the home team has typically won, has typically won the game. So that one's pretty tight. But and of course, there we play every year. But it's interesting. In the other sports, we really don't. I mean, we've gone to head in them with them for, I think, 10 sports, and only I think Navy's got four. Navy's got the advantage in four of them. Air Force has got the advantage in four of them, and there have been 2 ties. Okay, so if you look at the other sports besides football, it's baseball, women's basketball, men's basketball, men's lacrosse. Women's lacrosse hasn't played them yet, and I think they competed against them in like soccer or something like that. But so yeah, that one is just not as well known, and primarily it's because the Air Force Academy, it's been around since what, 1956.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a long time ago, but when you consider that the Naval Academy has been around since 1845, you know, and they've been playing Army since 1890, you know, that's a completely different element there.
Got to remember, most Air Forces around the world, were initially folded into the Army before they got folded out into its own individual thing. So it's you kind of
that's right.
Yeah, Air Force is pretty much, if it wasn't for the Second World War, I don't think there would be anything called the Air Force for a very long time, you know?
Right. Yeah. So, but
would you say the whole thing with regards to much of this, it's about the sort of Vincent Lombardi sort of thing, building habits of winning? You can build habits of losing, but with these competitions between Army, Navy, and Air Force, it's trying to build those habits of winning. For these guys?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that it all comes from the top. And when I say that, I mean, you got to look at the entire administration. If, for instance, the guy who runs the Naval Academy, his title is the superintendent, and he's typically a rear admiral or something like that. So everything comes from him or her. Okay. We haven't had a female superintendent yet, but that time is coming. And because women first graduated from the academy in 1980. So depending on where they are in their careers, my guess is, all right, the current superintendent is class of 83.
Right.
So my guess is any future superintendent, the possibility of it being a woman is just as good as another guy getting selected, because now we're getting into the time frame where the people to fill that position, you're going to see more and more women being competitive for it, because they're hitting that time in their careers where they're eligible to compete for that position. Right. So, anyway.
Oh, sorry. One quick question.
Sure.
When you say do you have to have a specific rank to basically qualify to lead the program?
Yeah, pretty much. You need to be at least a senior Navy captain, but I think lately it's been, a 1-star admiral, which is a rear admiral. Right. I'm sorry, 2-star admiral is rear admirals these days, I guess. So, anyway, so everything kind of comes from the top. If they place a strong emphasis on sports, then that kind of trickles down through the athletic department. And I think that what we're seeing now is, because there's been time in the past where you had superintendents who didn't give a hoot about sports, you know, and the program suffered. But I think that when you see the benefit of what's been happening over the last 20 years, especially with the football team, because that is a huge revenue producer, right? I mean, it's tremendous. And the amount of revenue it can generate to fund other teams and support basically the coaching staff salaries of other teams is unbelievable. So it's a win-win proposition when you recognize how important that is. So moving forward, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of superintendents that just basically blow off the athletic program. It's meant too much to the academy's growth overall. So,
yeah.
To your point, you want to get in coaches who understand the culture of the Naval Academy, and they're able to fit that in with their own, with their own goals, which, the primary one is beating Army. that's the main one. You could lose every match, you could lose every game in the season, but if you beat Army, your job is probably safe for another year.
Because you've beaten everyone. No other teams being able to score against you. Lost to Army by 1 point.
It's right. Well, this is a great example. This one year, it was, when was it? It was, it was just in 2017. Navy jumped out to this is in football, jumped out to a 5-0 record in football, but then we just got decimated by injury. But we beat Air Force that year. Yeah. And then we ended up qualifying for a bowl game, and we beat the University of Virginia in the bowl game. And Virginia's program was pretty decent, we clobbered them, and we beat them like 49-7. But we lost to Army that year, okay? And we lost to them for probably only the second time in 16 years.
Oh,
and because we beat them 14 times in a row, So, but in that year, if you look at 2017, they said, "Oh yeah, we beat Air Force, came from behind to beat them. We beat Virginia in a bowl game," and everyone will just go, "Yeah, but did you beat Army?"
Yeah.
If you didn't beat Army, nobody cares.
So, you just like you got this one like lone Army cadet that's like sitting there like, "Yeah, you beat everyone, but you didn't beat us that year."
That's right. That's right.
There's some
so. And well, here's a funny thing too. I might be getting kind of off the path that you want to go with here, but I got to throw this in, right?
Yeah, go.
So Army beats Navy. First of all, when I was at the Academy, when I graduated in 1984, and while I was there, we never lost to Army in football. We went 3 wins. There was one tie in there when I was a sophomore, but we crushed them every other year, freshman, junior, and senior year. And then for a while, there was a while in the early 90s where they beat us 5 times in a row. And then starting in 2002, all the way through 2016, we never lost to them. And in most games, it was just a blowout. I mean, we just would crush them. But and the biggest joke was I think during that tenure, we must have run like about 3 or 4 Army football coaches out of town. I mean, they'd hire them, they'd fire them, they'd hire them, they'd fire them because they couldn't beat us. So what do they do? In 2014, they hire a guy who came from Georgia Southern. But before that, he was an assistant coach at Navy. So my joke is, look, the reason you guys are competitive now is because you hired a former Navy coach. You couldn't do it. You couldn't get it right the first 3 times. So you figured out, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. And that's what they did. They hired a former Navy coach to compete, and that's what's happening now.
Like one of those, like, how can that sort of Navy coach sort of show up and like he can't come back and go, "Hi, sit down with you guys to have a drink" or anything like that?
Not during football season. He can't. I mean, exactly. we might be willing to welcome him back at another time. And in fact, both the Navy head coach Ken Niumatalolo and this other guy for Army, Jeff Monken, they were, like I said, they were assistants at Navy at the same time before Niumatalolo became the head coach in Navy, and Jeff Monken moved on to first Georgia Tech as an assistant and then Georgia Southern as the head coach. They're both really good friends, but it's pretty well known that they don't talk during football season. They just don't, because they're uber competitive, both of them, and they'll shake hands at the end of the game and stuff like that. But during the season, I mean, they are ready to tear each other's heads off, So it's pretty,
right. So
it's pretty funny.
Yeah, they're just like, no communications, no nothing.
Basically, yeah. I mean, or if there is communication, they don't talk about football. It's all family stuff and things like that. So, yeah.
Love it. Like one of the things like you sort of brought, like you made mention that yes, it is like the football team is quite an earner for the for the Navy, Army, and I imagine the Air Force as well.
Right.
This is the thing. There's been the raging debate of the NC. I'm gonna get it wrong. The board, what governs all of the sort of college.
Right.
What is it? NCAA.
Yeah, NCAA.
Yeah, with regards to paying like their sort of athletes, because the amount of money they generate on a sort of annual basis is scary.
Right.
Even more than the actual NFL itself. That's the only thing what comes close. Do you think? I know there might be changes coming down the line, maybe in 5 years' time or however long it takes. Do you think there will be ever a day where like there will be some type of financial compensation given to like any of the athletes?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people don't know this necessarily, but in a sense, and this is why whenever we have these discussions on, compensation or, this, kind of getting reimbursed for licensing and names and, using names and stuff like that, the service academies probably aren't going to be part of that conversation just because, like I said, because of what the mission is. Now, I will tell you right now that the only athletes in college football and for that matter, any sport that are getting paid legally are the ones that are going to the service academies. And the reason I bring that up is because the way it works is that, all right, we go there and it's a scholarship type of program, right? We don't have to pay for the education.
Right.
And while we are there, they pay every midshipman the equivalent of half of the base pay of the lowest ranking officer, which in the Navy's case is an ensign, and is an ensign. So now that doesn't mean that they're getting all that money. What that means is that's what they're getting, and then everything that they do gets taken out of that. Like they have to pay for their uniforms. They pay for X, Y, and Z, but they do get a monthly stipend. Okay, that it's just spending money, and it's changed quite a bit since I was there. But when I was a senior, I would get, I think it was $320 a month, and yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot now, but in 1984, when you don't have any living expenses whatsoever, $320 is a good chunk of change, So I guess my point is, I mean, our football players, they get paid not because of what they're doing on the football field, but because of that's part of the deal when you sign on to become a midshipman at the Naval Academy and then later a naval officer. So yeah, to your point, when you talk about athletes getting paid in college and all this other kind of stuff and getting this different type of compensation for what they do, the service academies are going to be kind of in their own separate bubble here. They're not part of that conversation because to an extent that's already happening, and it will never happen to a degree that it would like in a Division I school, like say LSU or Alabama, like that. And that's just a fact. That's just an understanding that the athletes have to have, when they sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, because like with you guys, yes, you're in a totally different bubble. I was just curious because I think this is something which has to be kind of addressed when like you're talking about, people putting their bodies on the line on a basis on a football team, and it's generating so much money. You kind of like go, I hear you're giving them a free education, which is all cool and all that, but the amount of for the sort of amount of work they've got to do on a daily basis to like go through just keeping up with their curriculum, doing like this, like doing the training, and then basically catching up with all their coursework after that, it is a hell of a commitment.
I totally agree with you. And I would tell you, for the record, when it comes down to these types of discussions, I will always come down on the side of the athlete. Okay. Period. End of sentence. Yeah. I do recognize, and certainly I expect it to be that way in those circles outside of, service academy athletics.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like I said, it's going to be kind of exempt, but if they are able to work out something for athletes that do go to the service academies, not so much in terms of just monetary stuff, but in other words, hey, you're doing this and we're going to pay you X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of things that they would have to hash out there, but what they could do, and this is something that is a possibility that because the Supreme Court here just ruled on it, they said, hey, there's other ways that if you want to give like educational perks and stuff like that for athletes that are, worth some monetary amount, you can do that. Now, and to that extent, that's what the Naval Academy is doing already. I mean, they're providing a lot of different types of monetary benefits to these athletes. I shouldn't say it, to the midshipmen, because I think all of them get the same benefits. They say, so I can see in the case of certain, different varsity athletes, especially when you're talking about, the big sports, and I would even throw in a few women's sports, even though they're not huge revenue producers, they're important for women's sports. Like for Navy, it's like Navy basketball and Navy lacrosse, Navy women's lacrosse. I mean, those are the two big, sports on the women's. Oh, and Navy soccer also. Soccer is a big one.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see certain, exceptions being made where with these athletes, maybe there's something that's a little bit more that can be done for them because, I mean, you go to the academy, you're looking at, 18 to 20 credit hours academically each semester compared to maybe 12 to 14 at a standard school.
Yeah.
Plus, all these other military commitments that you have during the summer, even before and after school and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on. There's no question.
Yeah, like this is very when you say lacrosse to me, like all I just think of it's the Psychos game of it's like, no, that's like yeah, like they give the guys pads. They're like, yeah, you can wear pads, but
right,
ladies just like, oh, we don't need pads. We're just gonna play the game. It's like, no, I don't need to be in your life or realm. Just stay away from me. It's a mad thing. Oh, hello. I think you're frozen, Carl. Wait a second. Carl, are you there, Carl? Yeah.
Now you're going to be editing this later, right?
I do very sort of minimal edits. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're going to be editing this part. I want to make sure I pronounce your first name correctly. So can you pronounce it for me?
Yes, Miwa. Oh no.
Oh, you're froze again.
Yep.
You're freezing up again.
Right.
Did you hear my question?
You asked me how I say my name.
Yeah. How do you pronounce your name?
Miwa.
Miwa. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. I just want to make sure because I didn't want to. I'm very sensitive when it comes to names. I never want to mispronounce anybody's name.
No worries. We're back recording, but like nevertheless, I will edit this part. And yes, like it's all
right.
Yeah, but yes, you were saying, sir. You were saying.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, we're talking about the women's lacrosse equipment, right? Now there are some limitations in terms of how they take their shots. They can't be overly aggressive. But still, I mean, and then there's some contact rules and stuff like that too. But yeah, I think they're crazy for not wearing more protective gear. There's no question about it.
It's like, look, you date a girl who does lacrosse. You just got you go with God if you wrong that woman. It's like
exactly, yeah.
Oh, that's mad. Like so, with this, like the realm of sports, especially in America, has been like really going through a change over the last, like, say, few months. And I think it's go through a mill of changes over the next few years. What do you think might be some of the changes do you think will be coming to sports?
Well, I think that what you're seeing here is a realization from the athletes that they have more power than they thought they had. Right. I mean, it all started with the NBA when these max contracts were starting to be developed and so forth. And, players can just basically say, hey, I'll play for you, but you got to bring me, X, Y, and Z, I think that any kind of changes you see moving forward are all going
to Carl, you're freezing up.
Going to be based a lot more power than they used to, and maybe that.
Sorry to interrupt, okay. Carl. You're freezing up a little. So like yes, like if you could repeat what you just said, because it was like there was a whole section. Like you mentioned the NBA and like the new the contracts for like players. If you could like mention, like go through that again, that I'd really
and I think you're kind of cut. Okay, yeah, because you're kind of cutting in and out as well. I mean, I'm hearing you better than probably you're hearing me, but I'll go ahead and start again.
Yeah,
you were talking about the the changes that are possibly coming down the line as it relates to professional sports. And I think that the main thing I'm seeing is that as athletes realize that they have more and more power, they're going to be able to basically set the agenda a little bit more in terms of whether it's salary or even other things. I mean, let's talk about the whole social justice thing, right? I mean, I don't think that 15 years ago you would have ever seen anything like what's been going on in the last year or so. And I think that guys like Colin Kaepernick were probably about maybe 3 years ahead of his time. Yeah, no problem. So I was referring to, when Colin Kaepernick, went through his when he was going through, leading his protest several years ago, as it relates to social justice, he was probably about 3 or 4 years ahead of his time, because I think what you're seeing now is a lot of the things that happened, after the whole George Floyd incident is not that much different than, and it's probably even more so than what Colin Kaepernick was doing. But I think everybody's recognizing that we're at a point now where athletes, the voice that they have is very, very influential. And they themselves are starting to realize this. So they're taking advantage of that, whether to change things socially or maybe even to change things for themselves on the athletic fields and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think like with regards to a lot of athletes, they're actually, how can I say, they are like, one, they have realized they've got sort of like a little bit more power than they thought they did. But two, I think they're a lot more aware and like sort of more like society conscious about what responsibilities they need to take. Don't get me wrong, like, yeah, back in the day, yeah, it was like, yeah, chase girls this and chase girls that, and like, yeah, get drunk and get some like your cars and like display your wealth. But now it's more like, okay, yes, I'm getting this large income. What can I help to do for the greater community, wherever that community might be and who they might represent on a day-to-day basis? Yeah, you see it now more so with, regards to the social justice side of things, because it's more prominent. But if you like took I think a healthy slice of all athletes across the board, they'll be trying to actively do things in a lot more positive manner for their communities, which some just go totally unrecognized for.
Yeah, I think you're right. You think back, I mean, when I was young, I mean, I grew up, when I first started following baseball, I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I was, this is like 1970. And there's a guy named Curt Flood, who was a very, very good outfielder for the St. Louis Cardinals. He got traded to I believe it was like the Washington Senators, and he refused to go. And the reason was because he felt like the trade clause in baseball was tantamount to slavery, because he just didn't believe that owners had the right to just trade players and basically keep them on one team. The players had no freedom. In other words, there was a reserve clause in baseball written into every contract that basically allowed the owners to maintain the rights to that player on a year-to-year basis. Okay, the contract would just be automatically renewed. And, Curt Flood finally decided that I've had enough of this, and he challenged it in the Supreme Court. Now, he lost,
right? But
that changed everything, because it was only like 3 years later where free agency came to baseball. And all of a sudden now you had players that, once they played out their contract, just like any other employee in the United States, they could go, and apply for positions elsewhere, right? So, in other words, Reggie Jackson was probably one of the first big free agents. Once his contract was up in Oakland, he signed with first the Baltimore Orioles and then ultimately with the New York Yankees, right? And there's just a ton of players ever since then have moved teams, and that all started from Curt Flood. So those are the kind of activists you had back then. But to your point, now you have people who, like you said, understand what their responsibilities are, and even if you don't hear about them on a national scale, at the local level, you're seeing different foundations that they'll start to help further education, maybe their literacy programs or something like that, or just different things that kind of keep young kids active so they don't kind of go down the wrong path, that sort of thing. And I think that's fantastic. I would love to continue to see that grow, as time goes on.
I think it will grow, because this is the thing. I would say one of the things because of, I would say, in the regards, as much as I sometimes think social media is the evil of all mankind, there is certain things which can be turned to the realm of good. And with that means a lot more of these guys are becoming more media savvy and basically are becoming their own sort of little broadcast studios. I remember I can't remember, I think it was an American football player. about in 2019. No, I think he was a track star. Sorry, who was like sort of he had a YouTube channel, and they kind of like going, you can't have a YouTube channel and this, that, the other. But because he had a YouTube channel, they were like there was a lot of attention brought to it, and they had to sort of back down his college and the NCAA. It was like, yeah. And
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I just can't remember his name, but he was like, he was the sort of, I would say, the first sort of test, like to really go with that. And like Kavanagh led the way, but I would say like everyone else, like you'll be looking at Kavanagh, who did it on sort of a more sort of like traditional media scale, but they're going to be looking at that kid who's done it through the social media, building a following and everything like this. And all I've got to simply say is, if you're on the football team, or in a sports team in any college, that is more or less the large, whatever the stadium holds for whatever sport that is, that's the following you get. And like one of the things what put me in a little bit of shock and awe, I was working for an organization called the Fresh Air Fund over basically in New York. And one of the things, like I was working in a summer camp, and we had a farm on this summer camp, which basically was like 4 different summer camps on this one huge, vast area. And all of those guys went to Cornell University. So I went back with like them during a rest period for 3 days. And like in the middle of, like, they dropped me in the middle of campus, and like Dennis, who was like the head farmer at the time, goes, and he pointed and went, in every single direction where we are right now, if you go 1.5 miles, you're still on campus. I was like, my jaw dropped. Then I looked, and I saw a football stadium, which most probably held around about 50 or 60,000. It was huge compared, like, that is like a Premier League stadium. And this was just a college stadium. Which blew my little mind. It was like, oh my God. So you're talking, that's the following someone can have on the team, especially if they're very popular, even more so. So who knows what their future will bring with that side of things.
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt about that.
But with regards to yourself, like you being in the sort of now social media, not the media game, but like in the bloggerverse, and now in the podcast verse, how many podcasts have you done? I'm always intrigued to hear from people which are like getting into the game.
Oh, right. So the one that's coming out next week, it'll only be, if you throw out the trailer, which is only like a minute, obviously, but if you're talking just straight up podcast, it'll be my 8th one. And if you throw in the trailer, 9th episode overall. So let's just call it the 8th one, because, the trailer was just a minute kind of introducing the podcast. And of these 8, 1, 2, 3, this will be my 4th one with a guest. So it's mostly a solo, but I try to get guests on whenever I can. I'm trying to do something. There's another podcast out there that covers Navy sports as well, but it's a little bit different format. Those guys are a little bit more connected because they are local to Annapolis.
Yeah.
And they can access, the guy who actually hosts a podcast used to be the public relations guy there before he got off active duty. So he is very dialed into the athletic director's office, and he's always setting up interviews with, like, the wrestling coach, the football coach, the athletic director, all these big shots. I'm kind of going for a different angle, I guess. And I've interviewed some coaches, but like, say on the football team, it wasn't the head coach or the defensive coordinator. It was the strength and conditioning coach, and, rowing, which again is an elite program, but not a lot of people know about it. One of the purposes of my blog and the podcast is to kind of generate a lot more support for these sports that you don't really hear about all the time, because those athletes work just as hard as anybody else.
Yeah.
And, some of them, like I said, can compete on the international level, such as rowing and other things. We got a female rugby player who's going to be competing to get on the Olympic team, So those sorts of things. And I think that that's that's kind of where my niche is. So most of my episodes so far have been split between, well, I'd say most of them probably have been just myself. But when I have a guest on, and I plan to have more guests on during the summer because, like I said, there's fewer things going on. But usually that does impact the length of the show. If it's just me, the length of the show is probably between, let's say, 23 and 30 minutes. If I have guests on and stuff like that, it's anywhere from 30 up to 45, depending on what's going on. So,
yeah. No, this is the thing. Look, put it this way. I would say get more guests on. And look, don't worry about that guy who's dialed into the, like, no, blah to him. Like, all I would simply say is, yeah, get a connection in there. Like, you know what I mean? Get in there. Because look, with the power of the interwebs, like, admittedly, there can be sometimes where you can have like internet slowdowns and stuff. But yeah, you can do them over Zoom, nice and easy, upload them, and like, yeah, have a wealth of people out there. Even like if you have to hit up the like team, like, yo, yeah, who's your coach? Who's your coach? Give me them.
Well, one thing that's really helped is that the blog has actually really helped because I've been able to stay, connected to Navy Sports the head Navy Sports Information Director. He was nice enough because I when I started up my project and everything, of course it helps that I'm a Naval Academy grad as well. But when I started up my project, I sent him an email about the blog and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. But, as you know, any kind of written media is, if you don't have any images to go with it, it's just death. I mean, nobody's just going to read a bunch of words on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. You got to have good images. So I was asking him for permission to use the images from the, different things that are posted on the Navy Athletics website in my blog. Yeah. And he said, yeah, sure. Go for it. Whatever our photogs take, you can use. And, we won't charge any money for it or anything like that. So that was pretty cool. And so I've been able to kind of work with him. And I think he's read enough of my material now where, like, especially after this last Army Navy feature, he kind of said, hey, if, whenever you want to send, feel free to send more of your articles my way. And if I think it's a good fit, I'll really give him a lot of play on Twitter and stuff like that. And I said, okay, that's cool. I really appreciate that. So that I think is going to help me, kind of get a little bit more connected with that department and get an opportunity to talk to more coaches.
Yeah. Like, this is the thing. If you think about it, you have not been in the game that long, but like, you know what I mean? Like, you just get like you're finding your feet at this present time. And I think there is sort of lots of scope to grow with this, by all means.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, then the other thing too is I plan to go back to Annapolis to visit in October, just because I kind of made a commitment to get back. I live, Arizona is a good 3.5 hour plane ride. But I made a commitment to get back because most of my friends are on the East Coast. I have like, work friends around here, but my true friends, most of them are on the East Coast and they're academy classmates and such. So I want to get back to visit with them. And one of the things I want to do is, set a couple of appointments with these guys in sports information to see how I can support them more, because I always looked at myself as not so much of a media person, but more of an extension of Navy athletics. I've told them, I said, look, if there's some sort of feature that you don't have time to do and you want it to get done, just let me know and I'll do it. I mean, I just do this for fun. I don't need the money. If some monetary aspect comes through because of, affiliate marketing and stuff like that I have set up, then great. But like I said, I'm just doing it for fun because I think that there's a lot of really, really good Navy athletes out there that don't get a lot of play. And just based on, I got like 2,000 followers on my Facebook group page. So, that's one audience right there. And I'm not saying like all of them are active or anything like that, but at least there's an avenue where they can get that information. And then the podcast just serves as another way for it to get out to people in case they just don't have the time to sit down and read something, or they just do a lot of commuting and just want to listen, so.
Yeah, no, put it this way, you got a community of 2,000 people. 2,000 people who have signed up for your page. Look,
right.
Put it this way, like 2,000 people is a hell of a lot better than one, and like a hell of a lot better than 10, 20, 30, right. 100. you know, and like this
Right.
thing, it's just a prospect of it just can keep on growing. And like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you never know how far it can grow. Like, because like this is the thing, out as they always say, out of small seeds, my acorns can grow. And
Right. Right.
like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I think this is like the way I see it. Yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
definitely stick at it, go at it. Like one of the things I would say to you is like, yeah, if you can get them up on YouTube. I know you put up one YouTube video a little bit of time ago. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if you can get that back onto sort of like a regular series, like if you just simply doing one a week or like, hey, one every 2 weeks, but you make it
Mm-hmm.
clear it's one every 2 weeks. Yeah, I think people will start to like flow in slowly but
Mm-hmm.
surely.
Yeah.
And like one of the things, there is a show over here called The Kickoff. Basically, they sort of, how can I say, they live watch the game, like, but they don't have it up on screen. They'll watch it on the screen, which you can't see, you can't hear sound, but like it'll be like, yeah, then passing comments and just general chit chat while the game's going on.
Uh-huh.
If you did sort of live things like that, that might be an idea as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually more preferred than like, I'm not a huge Twitter person.
Yeah,
Um, because part of the thing is, I'll like jump on the Twitter feed sometimes just to kind of scan it. And there's just like all these like disjointed conversations because you have other people talking about different stuff coming in between,
yeah,
like somebody who's watching a baseball game or something like
mm,
that. So it's really hard for me to follow. But I like that idea where you're basically like, if you do like a Facebook Live or something, that would probably work.
yeah.
Um, it's just a matter of getting it all set up and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'll definitely look into doing that, especially for maybe one or two of the football games, just to kind of see how many people jump in and participate.
Yeah, like because like this is the thing. Look, like with regards to the sort of military services, like okay, yeah, it's like it's about service. It's about helping and like helping uh the country in hours of need during peacetime, wartime, whatever it's called for. But the bigger thing I always see about it, no matter where you are, whichever armed services it is, it's about community at the end of
Right.
the day, and sort of like building and fostering that sort of community. I think you could build like quite a nice little community, or yes, a huge sway, either which
Mm-hmm.
way. I think there's a huge like realm of possibility for you.
Yeah, yeah, well, I appreciate that. So, yeah, it's kind of fun because, like you said, I mean, 8 or 9 episodes. I've only been the podcast is basically what 4 months old, I guess maybe. That's like baby steps. I haven't even like
Yeah,
gotten very far at all. But yeah, as time goes on, I think it'll be a lot more fun. And even in this shorter period of time, I've actually felt myself improving in terms of how long does it take me to put an episode together, and I've finally figured out a workflow that works for me
mm.
after several episodes, and I think that because I remember when I listened to my first couple, I was talking incredibly fast. I was like, why are you talking so fast?
Yeah,
So, and over time I've been able to kind of, I thought, okay, well, does an outline work better for me, or should I fully script it out and just kind of I've gotten better at just basically writing out the script and just talking to it like I'm talking to you or whatever. I mean, I do different things. Like even right now, if I find myself starting to talk too fast, I actually have pictures of audiences up on my wall or up on the opposite of my desk here that I'm looking at. That it helps me sometimes because I'm very comfortable talking to groups of people,
yeah,
and I was very uncomfortable talking to no one. So now, when I started out, I would basically look at these pictures of the crowd of people as I talked. So it kind of helped me get into that slower rhythm and everything. And now I find myself not having to look up there quite as often. And I've listened to the last few episodes of, the solo ones anyway. And I said, okay, there's definitely an improvement there. There's still ways to go, but there's a huge improvement.
oh, trust me. I know what you mean by like talking quickly. Like basically, like, yeah, my first couple of podcasts, let's just say, like, okay, when I was in the stage of where it was just me talking alone, okay, I can talk to a camera because it's there. But when like sitting there with a recorder, and then it'll be like, and then it's right. what am I meant to be talking about? Why am I talking about this? What's going on? And yeah, we'll either go really quick and I've given like 2 hours of information in about half an hour.
Right, yeah.
Just be like really slow. Just like going, just like going, why isn't this ending? Why does it feel like eternity? Then like hitting stop and like playing it back and it just says 10 minutes. It was like going, what?
That's pretty funny.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I have to, like, this is the thing. Like, now, one thing I'm always fascinated about, especially when it comes to people who love their sports. Now, if I give you the power to go back to any sporting moment, which sporting moment would that be?
One that I have seen before and want to revisit, or one that it took place before?
It can be one you've would like to revisit. It could be one you haven't seen, but you've seen enough reports and go, oh wow, I would love to be in there.
Okay. All right. Well, here's one that I would have loved to have been present for, although I did see it on a recording, and I have two that kind of come to mind. But the first one is when I was a senior in high school at the time, and it was when the U.S. Olympic hockey team beat the Russians in 1980 for the gold medal. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I saw that game. It was recorded. I had to watch it recorded, and unfortunately, I kind of knew the result before I watched the recording, because I think it was the guy on ABC News just basically, I couldn't get away from the TV fast enough before he like blurted out the score. And but nevertheless, I did watch the game, and I would love to have been in that environment live as one of the people in that arena, because the way Al Michaels described it in a later documentary, he said that when, first of all, every goal that was scored, things just kind of escalated, right? And then when Mikey Ruziano scored the go-ahead goal with about 10 minutes to go, he said it was the first time in his life where he ever got the sense that sound had feel to it. You know what I mean? I mean, the sound waves just ricocheting off the walls in the arena, you could actually feel them on your person. That's what it was like. And to be in that kind of environment at a sporting event, I think would just totally blow me away. Okay. So from a fan perspective, that would be unbelievable. From a historic perspective, the one event that I've loved to have been at was when Arthur Ashe beat Jimmy Connors to become the first African-American and only African-American male to win the Wimbledon championship. Yeah. That happened in 1975. I saw that live on TV. I was just nervous as could be. He was the one man that if I could ever have the opportunity, obviously he's passed away long time now, but he is the one guy I would have loved to sit down and have dinner with, because I think he's just such an excellent example of an athlete who used his talent to further a bigger cause. You know what I mean? And those are the two events that kind of stick out in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I didn't know it was 75. I know he tragically passed away because he was a hemophiliac through basically a tainted blood supply.
So what happened there is he had a family history of heart disease, and his career was actually ended a little bit prematurely because he had open heart surgery to correct I don't know, it's a type of bypass surgery. Yeah. And unfortunately back then the way they screened for blood was not like it is now, and of course the HIV virus was starting to really kind of pick up, and unfortunately he contracted HIV through a tainted blood supply that eventually turned into full-blown AIDS, and he died in, I believe, 1992. But that just crushed me, because he was like always one of my heroes.
Yeah, and like this is the thing, it's like one of those things, if he could have hung on for about say 3 more years, it would have been a much different prognosis. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, with all the medications they have out now these days, for sure. So.
Yeah, no, like you see that, like those like sort of periods, definitely a very interesting time. Got to say, and damn historic with regards to that, because there hasn't been another black.
No. I'm telling you, there has not. So now we're going on 50 years almost. Well, we'll call it 47 now, 46, where there's not been an African American male major champion of any kind. Forget Wimbledon, any kind. Yeah. So and in fact, the last time an American male, regardless if they're African American or not, won a major championship in tennis was like 2002. So,
oh my God. Was that Andre Agassi?
It was either Agassi or Andy Roddick. One of the two won I think like the U.S. Open, or maybe it's 2004.
Yeah, because
won the U.S. Open or something like that. But Agassi and Roddick were the two last, I believe, majors winners for the U.S. Sampras might have won one later on, but it's been a long time. So
like Pistol Pete, because there was he was on a tear for a good something like 5 years where he was just everything, and
for sure.
And then he retired, and then the rise of Federer and and Nadal all came into play. Mad times. Now, final question, and this is I think this might be the question to end all questions. Now, I take it you're a fan of the Muppet Show, right?
Well, I mean, I know the Muppet characters, sure.
Okay. Now, whatever, pick a film you might have seen, and if you had to replace all of the cast with Muppets except one human being out of the cast, which film would you choose and why?
So what I'm hearing you say ask is take a movie, replace all the characters with Muppet characters.
Yep, except one.
And which movie would that be and why? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, as I think about this, there's actually two ways you could go with this. I guess you could take a. Well, no, I'm gonna. I would go. I would go with the movie Titanic.
Titanic.
and now there is a little bit of a there's a little bit of a drama component. It certainly makes sense for comedies to fit the bill here, because you associate Muppets with comedy and so forth.
Yeah, but no Titanic.
Titanic. But as I'm thinking about Titanic, I'm thinking more so the characters, not so much what's happening specifically. Like there's an ugly side to that fictional story where you got the rich guy that wants to basically take out his fiance for running off with the other dude and stuff. But when I think about just the characters of who would play the captain of the ship and what would Big Bird's character be? What would Kermit's character be? What would Cookie Monster? Cookie Monster is my favorite one because I love cookies. So what character would he play? But yeah, that would be kind of interesting. So that's the one that kind of popped into my head initially. If I think about more of a comedy type of
thing.
And I'm gonna go to one.
When you say that, okay, you've got the Muppets in Titanic, but who would the human be then? Because you got the cast of the Muppets. Because who would be one human?
Sorry, say that again now.
Who would be the one human member of the cast?
Oh, got it. Who would be the one human?
Yes.
Well, I would go with DiCaprio. I would go with DiCaprio as the only human in that one.
So who's he? Who's he drawing in the cut, on the couch then, naked?
Oh, Miss Piggy.
Okay.
I mean, can't you just see that? I mean, Miss Piggy always kind of, pass herself off as really seductive and everything, so. That would be funny.
He wouldn't get out alive. Oh, sorry. But what was the Yeah, carry on.
Oh, so the other film would probably be let me see what would be a good one. So it's a funny movie. This one would probably have to be more like I'm trying to think of something that's not really like, R rated or anything like that. Um, just because it's just be a lot easier. Uh, I would say a movie like well, I guess the closest I can come is like Major League. It's probably the funniest baseball movie I've ever seen. It's about 30 years old, I guess. But I remember when it came out, it was really funny. So, and then the one human I would keep in that one would be, I think it kind of works to keep like the main characters as the human. So Tom Berenger, I would say, was the main character in this one. So I keep him there, but it had other big guys like Charlie Sheen and Wesley Snipes. They would be like different Muppet characters, something like that. But so yeah, those two I think would be good. That's a pretty interesting question. Yeah.
There's a reason why I asked it. Yeah, that one to psychologically profile you. You're a sick fiend. Sick fiend. Yeah, that's scores of dead Muppets floating on the water. I'm sorry.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, it's like you see, that's why you're sick. You're like, yeah. Oh, damn. Oh, Major League.
That's pretty good.
I love it. Oh, damn. Thank you for that. Thank you. So now I want to get you back on sometime in the near future because yes, definitely want to discuss in a little bit more detail, see how things are going, say maybe 3 months, maybe a little bit longer than that down the road, because yes, I'm going to be your coach, keeping you on the straight and narrow.
Well, that sounds like fun. I would love to do that. And yeah, like I said, I mean, it's funny because right now I'm kind of entering a phase in my life where I've taken a step back from full-time work. I just don't, I'm just not doing that anymore for a number of different, so I basically do this for fun, have, the podcast and the blog, and then just kind of keep busy with the local kids. I do some, tutoring and substitute teaching at the local junior high school. So those are things that I do to kind of keep me busy. And then, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fun trying to develop this and see how far I can take it as these two individual projects, the podcast and the blog, just to see what happens. But yeah, it's fun. And I'm always interested in talking with people who got a little bit more experience than me and can kind of, point me in the right direction when it comes to certain things. So yeah, I definitely would appreciate that.
No problem. Happy to do it. Yeah. Can you tell the lovely people out there how they can find you on the big wide webs?
Okay. Yeah. So if anybody who's got even a passing interest in Navy sports, they can come up on navysportsnation.com, and it'll pull up all the blogs that I've had. Basically, it's a nice, easy, readable newspaper type format. The imagery is really good, and if you're ever interested in checking out any kind of Navy paraphernalia in terms of athletic wear and stuff like that, there's a affiliate marketing page as well. And then the podcast is just called navysportscentral.com. And like I said, I'm about in line. This episode that's going to drop in about another week is going to be episode 9. And like I said, I've been doing that since about late March or so. So navysportsnation.com, navysportscentral.com. And then I do have that group Facebook page. You can just go into the Facebook search and type in, Navy Sports Nation, and it'll come up.
Excellent. Karl, I've got to say, thank you for coming on today. You have been a star. You have been a legend. And yeah, maybe a little bit psychotic with how you want to get rid of Muppets, but that's another story.
Right. Okay, well, thanks very much.
No,
I really appreciate it.
no problem. I'd like to say also to you, my friends, my life warriors who are still watching at this point, I'd like to say thank you for watching. Thank you very much for your time and company. What I'd also like to say is please stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world, and then some. Oh, yeah. Ha. Peace. And we are out.
Thanks a lot.